Oh my goodness. Underdog podcast listeners, do I have a treat for you today? I was just saying to my guest, who you're going to meet in a second, I'm having a bit of a fangirl moment. The woman that you're going to meet in a second has written a book, which I'm going to name Goodbye Perfect: How to Stop Pleasing, Proving, and Pushing for Others and Love and Live for Yourself. And um, I am really looking forward to this conversation. You'll notice that season 4 is all about wholesome living. Season 4 is all about how to step into who you were meant to be. And it just seems really appropriate to introduce Homaira Kabir to all of you today. Welcome, Homaira. It's a real pleasure to have you here.
Thank you, Jenny. Likewise, I feel really happy, excited to be here and talk to you and your listeners. So, thank you.
My pleasure. And I just wish, if those of you that are looking on YouTube, you can see kind of some of our energy. But for those of you that are listening, her warmth exudes right off the YouTube channel. So, Homaira, I always love to have people introduce themselves on my podcast. I feel like it's very important, particularly as a woman, to share what you choose to set the stage for our conversation today. So, take it away.
Thank you, Jenny. You know what? I don't have a formal introduction. I have struggled for the longest time to have an elevator pitch, and I just found that very inauthentic. And so I will just say who I am. So my name is Homaira Kabir. I am professionally, I'm a women's personal development and leadership development coach. I before this, I used to be a psychotherapist, and I just realized through my research that, we exist as human beings on a wide spectrum. I mean, in fact, it's a two spectrum model that I studied in the research, which is, we can be that mental illness and mental well being isn't the same thing. And to really help ourselves live the full extent of our lives, it is just not enough to overcome mental illness. If for those who have
Wow.
it, but also take the steps that enable us to flourish and to lift our mental well-being. And that is when I started the coaching, and so I work on the entire spectrum, because we exist on the entire spectrum from illness to well-being. We can so many of us struggle with so many challenges of the past, and yet we are able to flourish in certain aspects of our lives. And likewise, so many of us can be struggling with mental challenges,
Mm-hmm.
or be not have any mental challenges but still feel that we're languishing, that there's no purpose to life. So back to who I am. I work in personal development. I'm about flourishing, about how do we live the full extent of our lives along with any challenges that we may have. And I'm also an author. My first book, Goodbye Perfect, is the one that you've just spoken about. But apart from being an author, I'm just a writer at heart. I think I often say I didn't find writing. I never went to any formal training for writing, but I feel writing found me. And I write
Interesting.
just to express myself, to understand myself. And I feel it helps other people understand themselves too in the process, because at the end of the day, our experiences, our challenges, our longings are so similar. And and so, in a nutshell, that's who I am. I'm also a mom to four wonderful
Four.
young adults.
Oh,
Yes,
congratulations. You must be so proud.
I am a very
Yeah.
proud mom,
Yeah.
and I'm
Yeah.
just on this life journey along with everyone else and trying to live it well.
Beautiful introduction and welcome. So, Homaira touched on flourishing. She touched on some of her definitions around mental health and mental wellness. We're going to get into that today. We're going to, on a Jenny Mitchell note, I want to blow up the word executive presence. We're going to talk about what that means like. But before we get anywhere into those great topics, Homaira, tell us about your research project, just to ground the listeners in your research and what you discovered during that research process.
Yes, Jenny. So it was very interesting, but it began with, just my observation being here. Uh, when I was doing my coaching, I would come, meet all these wonderful women who were competent, who were successful. In fact, I had just newly started my own coaching career, and sometimes I would hear my own inner critic when I was sitting next to them and feel quite inadequate and think, you know what?
Yeah.
I have none of these qualifications. I have none of
Yeah.
these
Yeah.
successes. And what's wrong with them? Why are they criticizing themselves? I have reason to have an inner critic, but they don't. That kind of
Mm-hmm.
comparison that we tend to do, our minds tend to
Mm-hmm.
do. But I used to be pretty shocked by their lack of self-nurturance, lack of self-confidence, the instant self-doubt, the instant imposter syndrome. And I was trying to get at why this was so. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I had studied the psychology literature for so long. There is so much research on how self efficacy builds confidence, meaning that if you have competence, that naturally leads to confidence, which is why, we have all these slogans, just do it. And, if you take action, you will feel confident. So if you want confidence, just take action. And I thought, you know what? They are taking all the action they need
Yeah.
to take. They even having all the successes they need to have. What stops it from sinking in? Why don't they feel confident? And that is what I really needed to understand. What is confidence? And if it is what we think it is, then how do we build it? Um, and so when I went into the research, one, it was the most confusing research that you can
Interesting.
find. Confidence is an extremely, um, I mean, there is no one definition of confidence. But the one that felt most true to me and that I observed in the women I work with and in myself is something that is called optimal self esteem. That is what it came across as. It is the high confidence, and versus that is a form of high confidence versus another form of high confidence, which is called fragile self esteem. And so
Mm-hmm.
there are two forms of high confidence, one is optimal and one is fragile. And basically, the only difference between the two is implicit, meaning it's not even in our heads. So if
Wow.
I, it's
Wow.
not even in our heads. It's embedded deep inside. It could be in our core beliefs. It could be in our
Yeah.
bodies. It could be, beyond our core beliefs in our subconscious minds.
Yeah.
But it shows up as pleasing, as proving, as, even when we know that these things aren't helpful, controlling, perfecting, even when we know these things aren't helpful, there's the emotional urge
Mm-hmm.
to still keep doing them and feeling bad if we don't. And so confidence was really optimal self esteem. And to be able to build optimal self esteem, we have to build something that implicit sense, which is called global self esteem. I'm giving all these psychological terms
Definitions.
here,
I love it.
definitions, but that sense of global self esteem is this implicit sense of belonging. If we were to break it into its irreducible components, it is an implicit sense of belonging and an implicit sense of mastery. And what this
Huh.
means, that implicit sense of belonging, is just a feeling that you just like yourself. You like
Ah.
yourself with all your quirks and your imperfections and your weaknesses and your
Yep.
mistakes and your faults and everything. You just take the whole of yourself and you have this sense of compassion for yourself where you recognize that you're a human being and thus you're a paradox and you've got the good and you've got the bad, like they say, the two wolves of the heart.
Yep.
And that it doesn't mean that you just say, okay, fine, I'm going to flaunt my
Yeah.
bad wolf. It is
Yeah.
recognizing that you have it and then taking responsibility for your presence in this world and saying, okay, you know what, my work is working on this bad wolf when it's
Yep.
getting in the way, when it's hurting others, when the rest of it. Literally, Jenny, like a, a loving parent. I call this the work of parenting yourself, because a
Yep.
parent, if you go crying and you're hurt or you made a mistake or you did something wrong, they would first just calm you down and say, honey, it's okay, my love. It
Yep.
happens. I'm here. Don't worry about it. But then they just won't leave it at that and say, now go have chocolate or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
It'll
Go
be
do.
like,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, what can we do now? Like, how can we make this better? How can we
So
fix that?
is it that simple? I mean, it's fascinating to hear folks that are listening. This is what the research says. That to have global self-esteem, we have these two different kinds of self-esteem. We have optimal self-esteem and we have fragile self-esteem. So we're learning these definitions, but the takeaway I have is that self-compassion, compassion is a huge word for me, Homaira. My book is called Embracing Ambition, and it's this idea that compassion and ambition must coexist, that they're not two separate things, but to truly help and support someone in accountability, you must also have compassion. So, and this idea of liking yourself, how many of us on this recording, just take a minute, whether you're driving or whatever, can you honestly say, and I can, that you like the way you show up in the world. You like you. I'm not talking about the wrinkles around your eyes or the extra rolls or the thing you made for dinner last night. I mean that you believe you're a decent human being doing the best on the planet. How do we, Homaira, how do we lose track of that? How does that happen that we forget that?
Ah, I guess so many things. I mean, especially
Mm,
for women. One, we are just high conscientious people. It is how we evolved, I guess, because we had to take care of our
yeah,
tribes and of so many people. And so we hold a high bar for ourselves. And there's nothing
yeah,
wrong in that. I mean, it's a good thing. Like you said, you think about compassion and ambition, right?
yeah,
But to also know that we're also human, we're also weak, we also have
mm,
these natural tendencies, whatever they are, and we will make mistakes, and that is okay. We are the same person with those same high aspirations and ambitions and conscientiousness, and we can always get
yeah,
back up, dust ourselves off, and keep
move
keep
forward.
going.
Yeah. the
um,
the I was going to say the expression I was telling Hamara before I got on this call. I've had a challenging day with a couple of things going on, and but it on the grand scheme of things, nobody died, is what I said when we joined this call. Like we kind of get so self caught up in ourselves, don't we? In our busyness of our heads and our lives and etc. And I hope this call or this podcast really reminds folks that be where your feet are and remind ourselves that today, right now, matters.
Right now matters exactly, Jenny. And the thing is, be with yourself. Like, be
Mm,
with yourself, be kindly with yourself because nobody else can do it for you.
no.
Even if people had the best of intentions, they won't, they can't, they don't have the time, they don't know you as well as you do. And just be there for yourself. That's the kindest thing you can do, not just to yourself, but for how you show up around other people. I
Yeah.
mean, when we aren't there for ourselves, we cannot be there for other people. In fact, if we try to be, that is where pleasing and all the rest of that comes in because it's from a place of self defense rather than
Yep.
genuine kindness.
So let's go there. So what Homera just said, I want to repeat it, is you must first show compassion and kindness to yourself in order to model and mirror it and have enough in the tank for others. Something I've been saying lately is because I'm in a good place right now, we all ebb and flow, right? And I've been thinking to myself, wow, really grateful for the place I'm in, which means I have a little bit more in the tank. And I've been very consciously making sure to share that with others. I have to say that's something I've thought about. So let's dive into these behaviors. The pleasing, I've heard it called the fawning, what is it, the four F's, the reactions to dominance. Where do they come from? How can we notice them?
Yeah. They come from so many places, but they come from inherently a feeling of low self-worth or lacking self-worth.
Okay.
These behaviors are basically masks to protect a certain lack or inadequacy that you feel inside of yourself. So, and again, so much of this is subconscious. You're not doing it
Yeah.
intentionally, but you're just doing them because you feel that somehow you will be acceptable to others when you do them. And and most times we get rewarded for them.
Yes, we
Most times
do.
we get rewarded for them in our homes when we were really little, and so they become natural to us. But then we also get rewarded for them in society. I mean,
Sure
think
do.
about it. A strong woman who's pursuing her ambitions is never looked on very favorably. Uh, and there are so many things. So we just get rewarded for these behaviors, and then they become part of us, and we feel that, we have to continue them. But that inherent sense of lack stays there. There is nothing that is shifting that. So unless we work on that, we will not be able to let go of these behaviors. The thing is, these behaviors then take on a life of their own. So even when we work on the inner lack, we still have to practice certain things to grow from there, right? So but it becomes so much easier when a sense of, you know when it's not getting the blows of moral, of a, something, as our sense of self being right or wrong through them,
Yeah.
right? So once you do the work of, self-worth, it becomes much easier to work on them, because
Yeah.
it's like habit shifting. It's like actions that you take. It will be uncomfortable at times, but at
Yeah.
least, when you fail or when it doesn't go well, you're not feeling, oh
Yeah.
my god, I've exposed myself again and now
Yeah.
nobody will like me.
So I want to test these out on you because, and I'm very mindful that you were a psychotherapist first, and I'm one of those people that seeks to understand. I am
Yes.
constantly asking questions. So, I, we all don't want to have low self-esteem. Like, there's nobody that walks around and goes, "Yay, I
Mm.
have low self-esteem."
Yeah.
But I find it's very hard to figure out how to start changing that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think the behavior part is the more easier part, Homaira,
Yeah.
right? So that, we can talk about behaviors and actions, and we can talk about getting uncomfortable and trying things and seeing how that goes. But one of my theories is that lack of self worth, one of the first things you must do is decide that that's unacceptable to you as a person, that you decide for yourself that your contribution is worthy of something. And it can be as simple as that to spark all sorts of other things. So, one thing that's really important for me for this podcast is for anybody listening, it really does start with you. For me, it started with walking into a therapist's office. I'm pretty honest about that experience. For those of you listening, it might be one thing you decide that you're going to look at the mirror and say, "Look at my great arms." I remember being in this terrible, it wasn't a terrible relationship, but it was very self-esteem debilitating relationship,
Mm.
Homaira.
Mm.
And I remember waking up one day and looking at myself in the mirror, and I said, "I've decided that as of today, I am pretty."
Yeah.
And it was like this moment where I just couldn't listen to everybody else's analysis. By the way, it was completely contrived, right?
Yeah.
Like, this was something
Yeah.
I created. But if
Yeah.
I created it, I could create it back. I am going
Yeah.
to be pretty from now on. And
Yeah.
from there, I started to dig myself out. And we're talking about physical attributes, but the
Yeah.
same happens for psychological attributes. So,
Yeah.
do you agree it starts with yourself?
Oh, definitely. I mean, you see, Jenny, there is so much research on the cycle of change,
Okay.
and we go through so many steps. I mean, there are six, but we don't just move linearly through the six, right? It's a cycle of change. You go forward, you go back, you move two steps forward, one step back, five steps back. And you have to be at the place where you say, this is it. This
Yeah.
is it. The red pill, blue pill kind of thing.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
and Nim says, right? Yeah, that you have to get to the place where you say, enough is enough. I
Yeah.
cannot. And you get to that in so many ways. But again, it begins from that place of self compassion,
Yes, it does.
because you have to recognize there's this beautiful soul inside of you. There's this hurt inside of you. There's this little child inside of you. And when are you going to turn to it? When are you going to recognize that it's hurting? When are you going, it all begins from there, because unless you can say, yeah, you can say enough is enough and I'm going to do this, but
Yep.
it won't last, because
It's false.
it has
It's
to begin.
fragile, right?
It's fragile. And the other thing is, you have to recognize along with that, because remember I said there are two components to global self-esteem. The first is the belonging, the second is the mastery. And mastery is basically owning your qualities, owning your abilities, like taking full ownership, saying, these are my gifts, this is what I have to offer the world, and however I'm showing up, I'm not able to do that, and so let me take responsibility for that. So when you say enough is enough, it's literally saying, hey, this is who I am, and this is how
Mhm.
I want to show up in the world. And I'm not going to let anything get in the way, because you know what? It is my responsibility. I will die with regrets if I don't do this, or I will not make the impact that I long to make if I do not do this. I mean, you know what? Or if I will not feel the joy that I want to feel if I don't do this, right? There
Yeah.
is.
So let
I honestly just go back again and again to saying there is, our soul is like the little us inside of us.
yes.
And it's our responsibility as the parent to allow that little child, the soul, whatever it is, to come forth in the world, because that is why we were given that little child. It is our
Yeah.
responsibility to it.
And we can heal ourselves, is the other message I hear.
Yeah.
We really can heal ourselves and we can find joy in our life again and we can thrive and we can flourish when we show that self compassion for that little person that you are
Jenny,
still, right?
yes, we all are to our dying days there. I mean, look at so many older people. You see them with that, despite all
Yeah,
the grief and the everything
yeah.
that they've been through in life, they're still young at heart. That child never leaves you.
Child never leaves you. And the
Oh,
other thing that I can speak to from my journey is the emotions that go with it. When you try to repress emotions, when you try to stop emotions, or not let them flow through you or touch you, you dampen the dark, but you also dampen the light. So if you can see me on YouTube, my hand is kind of going straight across the screen rather than allowing myself to feel the highs and the lows. And I think that's another thing women don't do is we don't celebrate ourselves or our accomplishments enough. When I congratulate a woman, way to go on XYZ, and she'll say, oh, it was my team that did it. Can we just stop saying that? I mean, I'm not saying that we shouldn't support our teams and celebrate them too, but can we also own it for ourselves? Why is that so hard for us?
again, so many of this is just everything boils down to, I think, a mix of early experiences and societal expectations. you know I even see it in my kids. Like, I have
Do
twins. I have
you?
a set of twins, boy, girl. And my son would say, oh, this was like, I'm so proud of myself. I really put in the hard work, and look, the amazing stuff that happened. So proud of me. It seems fine coming out of him. And when my daughter says it, I'm like, we carry these subconsciously, we
Yes, we
all
do.
carry it. And there's nothing wrong with it. It's just recognizing that, you know, why did I viscerally react differently when both of them said it? And so,
Yeah.
what am I going to do? That's it. Like, it's always just recognizing. They say self awareness. When you're self aware, you can overcome anything. But if you're not self aware, how are you ever even going to do it?
Yeah.
So just investigate yourself all the time, and
Yeah.
yeah. So for women as well, we don't see our mothers celebrate themselves. In fact,
No, we
our mothers many,
don't.
no. And in fact, our mothers many times tell us, be modest there. That did not sound very girl, woman like or girl like, or that was blah blah blah. And and so, yeah, we need to have those role
Role
models. We
models.
need to practice. We need to be
Yeah.
able to say it in a way that feels authentic.
Yeah.
And we need to be able to say it in a way that gets validated, because so many times, Jenny, we have to remember that we are going through this huge transition, collective transition.
Yes, we are.
And culturally, we're still not ready to see strong women. So we have to work with that. We have to be smart and wise about it. Instead of saying, I don't care, what society thinks, and I'm still going to, and then, get backlash for it. What's the point of that? It harms us and it harms the women around us. So, how do we do it in a way that's authentic? How do we do it in a way that doesn't turn people off? And and so I always talk about, in the book, you've read the book, I have this model called Sing, Sing, because I think it's easy to remember, because it's like sing your praises. And how do we do it? And that walks you through the 4 steps. First, you have to see it instead of saying, oh, that was
Yeah.
nothing, or blah, blah, blah. Like, we don't often see all the wonderful stuff that we're doing in a day. So see it. The I is for internalize it, feel good about it, take it in, let that warmth sink in. At least to yourself, you can do that. Allow yourself to do that. The N is for notice all the things that you did for it to happen so that you can do it again. And then the G, which is the final thing and is also very important, be grateful for everything and everyone that helped you there. And that way, I find when we do it that way, it really does make it feel genuine. It really does give credit where it's due, and it also wins the favor of other people,
Yeah.
and people then are more inclined to
Yeah.
also lift us up, which creates these beautiful upward spirals.
Yeah, I love that. Sing. I'm going to remember that. And I love
Oh,
that you can do it with yourself. You don't need anyone around you.
yeah.
Something else that's coming up for me is when we see women doing wonderful things, please, all of our underdog listeners, can we celebrate them for them? Can we make sure we tout them from the rooftops? Can we thank them for how they have led, or rather than sort of, we have a bit of there's an old story about women that they don't support each other, and I realize that's attached in some ways to this, the patriarchy, the idea that there's one male and that the women are vying for their attention from a biological perspective. Is there any research that supports that, or is that just something that we've felt? I'm curious.
There's no research that I'm aware of, but there definitely is research saying that all work, like when we're lifting other people up, it's not only about just protecting them. When we're lifting other women up, allyship, it's not just about protecting them and speaking up for them when somebody says something that disadvantages them in
Difficult.
some way.
Yeah.
But an equally important part is exactly what we are discussing, promoting them, bringing their strengths to the awareness of other people, saying, saying that, this is the job or the role that you're looking for. I know just the right person because she has
Yeah.
A, B, and C qualities.
Yeah.
So it's not only about protecting, it is about promoting other women. And to your point, Jenny, about celebrating other women, Sing is a wonderful model to do that as well. Because as women, we often don't see our good qualities, and it really helps to be the illuminator in somebody else's life. Help them see what they did well. Help them take it in and ask them questions like, how did it make you feel? Allow them to
Mm-hmm.
feel that. Help them notice the actions that they took for it to happen, so that it goes down and they feel that sense of confidence that I can do it again instead of feeling like an imposter. And then the G, who helped you there. So again, you're really helping them
Mm-hmm.
take it in. Um,
Mm. I
but yeah,
love
I
that.
think it is extremely important for women, because to rise, we have to rise together. We have to
Together.
lift as we rise. There is no
Yeah.
other way.
There's no other option. Be the illuminator in someone's life. I just wrote that down on a sheet of paper. So in our last minutes here, and I would love for you, she just drops this into the conversation at the beginning. She says, well, if we have time, maybe we can talk about our ultimate purpose in life and the idea of flourishing. What does flourishing mean to you, Homaira?
Flourishing, there's so many definitions, but to me, flourishing means to feel good and do purposeful work. So to feel good and function well doing work that feels meaningful and purposeful. So it's both. It is the joy and the
Yeah.
meaning. Like I said, we are both the little child and we the adult. And the child wants to feel joy and the adult wants to feel meaning. So it is part of our paradox, and we have to hold both together, hold the paradox together. And I think that is the ultimate purpose of life. Did we live well? Did we live fully? Did we engage with life? I mean, there
Yeah.
is so much joy, Jenny, even amidst that paradox exists in everything, right? Even amidst the brokenness, there is so much beauty, there is so much joy. I think, this society gets us caught up in what pleasure means and,
Mm-hmm.
all the big ways we can feel happier. But happiness is just sitting with your cup of
Yeah.
tea out in the lawn and
Yeah.
hearing the birds,
Yeah. For
looking
me,
out the
there's
window and seeing that
yeah.
little child,
Yeah.
trying to catch a butterfly.
Hmm.
That is joy.
Yeah. For me, it's animals are a big part of that, right? They don't see forward
Yes,
or backwards. They just see the moment. And the word I would add is contentment, right? So
yes,
finding contentment in those little things. The research on gratitude, of course, has been well documented, but practicing it is a completely different thing, and making sure we're consistently doing it. Um, and tell me about your happiest. You mentioned you are a coach and you work with people through this journey. What has surprised you? We talked about why they're coming to you, and how you're surprised that these very accomplished women, on their journeys to success or contentment or flourishing, is there anything that surprised you along that journey for them? I'm curious.
yeah. I mean, it's a great question, and I was reflecting on it as you were asking the question. What surprises me, Jenny, is how averse we are to taking the easier path.
Mm.
You know, if something is easy, if something is fun, if something is joyful, we feel that somehow it's not the right thing.
Wrong. Yeah.
Wrong, wrong.
Yes.
It needs to be hard. And
Yes.
I genuinely believe it's because we have conflated hard work with virtue. We believe that to be a good person in some way we have to work harder, and there are many reasons this has come about. Again, it's the patriarchy, again it's those Puritan values,
They
but
are.
we have to just lighten up a little bit and say, this is the journey. Let's make it easy, let's make it joyful. Purposeful work was never
Mhm.
never ever meant to burn you out, to drain you, to yes, you can have moments of that, obviously, but ultimately, it's
Mhm.
an uplifting journey.
It's
So enjoy
uplifting.
it. Make it
Yeah, we're
easy.
all. It really is. There's That's so beautiful what you've just said. And the takeaway for me and hopefully for my listeners is keep it simple. Follow the
Absolutely.
things that matter to you. Lighten up on the things that don't. Pursue the things that bring you flow. I think of one of my particular clients who uses the word flow. I say, "How do you know?" I ask coaches ask a lot of open-ended questions, right?
Yeah,
How
yeah.
how will you know? And she will always reply, "Because it just flows. Like it's not. I don't have to think or over micromanage it."
All right.
My wish for everyone listening is to have more of that simplicity in their lives. And if it's not simple in your lives, you do have sovereignty and choice on. And I love this. I feel like I'm coaching myself. This is kind of scary. As I'm thinking about all the things going around in my head that I feel I'm so important about. But you have control. You have way more control than you think. And letting go of some of that perfectionism and letting go of the expectation. I always say the disappointment happens between the desired outcome and your achievement. And that's where disappointment happens. So change your expectations. Change. How many women do I know that change the goalpost when they get there? They want
Right.
100 people subscribed and then they move it to 500 because they think that would be a better number. And they hit 500 and they move it again because they can't actually embody what it feels like to achieve it and be proud of themselves for
Yeah,
it.
yeah, exactly. And having high ambitions is not the problem. It's
Right.
often just choosing a very convoluted path to it. It's having the perfect path to it. Just a simple question like, is there an easier way of doing this?
Yeah.
Just ask yourself that question. Is there a more joyful way of doing this? They are simple
Ugh.
questions, but sometimes just stepping back and asking ourselves that. I can tell you, Jenny, how many times I've asked myself that question, and then just
Mhm.
everything has just lightened up. Just that permission.
I love that. So I'm seeing the visual for this promotion of this podcast as these little jagged lines, right? Where you start and where you end up. And I really appreciate too how much you talked about the steps forward and the step back and the step forwards and the step back. None of this work is linear. I so take that to heart. And when I think about, why I started the Underdog Leadership podcast, it was to have conversations about. I truly believe that the people we're talking about, Homaira, the people that have questioned their
Mm,
confidence, the people that are seeking and asking these deep questions,
mm,
they are the people that are perfectly positioned that we need more of
Mm,
in the leadership space. We
mm,
don't need any more cookie cutter, I know the right way
mm,
people. We need
mm.
people who have struggled through this. You mentioned mental health and mental wellness. I love that balance. We need the people who have done this work and
Yeah,
come out the other side, not as, wipe off my hands and I'm done with it, but rather I've come through this and it has changed me.
yeah.
And this is why I'm perfectly positioned to lead.
Exactly. That is exactly it. It's just that I'm a little ahead in the path, but
Yeah.
it's all the same journey. We're all
Yeah.
on the same path, and I'm a little ahead, and I've learned a
Yeah.
few things, and here is how it may help you, kind of thing. So, not the experts that, that same top down patriarchal model, here it is, here are the answers, and they have to apply to you. That again becomes the
Yeah.
shoulding and the whole,
Yeah.
that whole
Yeah.
cycle of then being hard on ourselves when we don't
That's
live
right.
up to those.
And we don't live up to it. Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, this has been such a great conversation with so many little nuggets that I'm taking away. Maybe um, the most powerful one for me, I'm just looking at my notes, is be the illumination in somebody's life. Be that illuminator. Homaira, if people want to get in touch with you, how can they connect? Tell us more.
My website would be the easiest way to do so, homairakabir.com. It's got a contact form as well. They can get in touch with me through that. And thank you, Jenny. This has been so lovely.
It's been a lovely conversation. And I know your book is available on your website. Again, it is called, I'm going to read it out because it's so great. It's a pink book too. It's beautiful. Goodbye, Perfect: How to Stop Pleasing, Proving, and Pushing for Others and Live for Yourself. And there's a beautiful section on your website about your story, which I really encourage folks to listen to as well, or to read as well. So, as we close out, just a reminder to all of you how much I appreciate you listening. It means a lot to me personally, but it also helps get the word out. I have met so many people on airplanes and at conferences that say to me, "Oh, you're the Underdog Leadership Podcast lady." And I say, fan moment, first of all. But second of all, my first question is always, did you enjoy the episodes? What did you learn from it? This is a project that I hope, and like the book, has real legs. I genuinely want people to take this content and apply it. And then if you will, let me know about it. Tell me how it worked or how it didn't work. I love those conversations. So again, I welcome you to reach out. We'll have show notes. We'll have Homaira's website on them. We'll have my email, jenny@chavender.com. That's Chavender like lavender. And I hope you'll get in touch, because this is our journey. As Homaira said earlier, it is not just, you don't have to do this alone. Maybe that's the way to put it, eh, Homaira? You don't have to do this alone.
Exactly, exactly. It's a woman's journey. It's always in togetherness. So, yes,
Mm.
we shouldn't do it alone.
We
We
shouldn't do it
cannot do
alone.
it alone.
We cannot do it alone. Okay, so now I have to just send all of you a wish that you pull out your phone and you text a girlfriend and say, "I'm so grateful to have you in my life." I just love that love to be sent around. It's been a wonderful conversation. It's been a warm and loving conversation. I'm so delighted to have spent some time in your presence. And I look forward to hearing more from you, Homaira. Thank you.
Likewise, Jenny. Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Have a great day.